Yeah, so in terms of the stock price, management always takes responsibility for share price, especially for small cap companies. It's the responsibility of management to get the story out. In our case, we're not getting the story out, and it's simply not anybody's wish that a good story is held back. But it is an education process. There's no question about it. And if the stock's 82 cents or 85 cents, and the valuations from one of our projects is well over $5 per share, then we're not communicating the story properly. So I think education is a key matter in communicating. But let's focus in on that communication. So the market, it's still a resource market in general. So if you have like a bankable feasibility study come out on a mining project, and it comes out with a number and says, look, this is the net present value of the project. A lot of market participants, both institutional and retail, they know how to deal with that information. Nobody really is in the real estate business per se as a venture capital opportunity. So when Altus, which is the gold standard of documenting the value of a project, comes out and says, look, we've done this third-party research. Altus is a $2 billion company. They're the leading valuation firm for real estate for Canadian companies and for some American companies. Look, we've done this study. We've done this analysis. We spent a year on it. And as of January 24th, 2022, which was the date of the Altus report, the profit for Greenbriar is $173 million over a period of 7 years, and the net present value is $123 million. So that's, obviously the discounted value up front is $123 million US, and you convert that to Canadian dollars and you divide that by 34 or 33 million shares outstanding, you easily get a $5 Canadian valuation. Other industries, you would know what that means. In this industry, you know what it means if you're a blue chip trading on New York as a REIT, but people in the venture capital world do not know how to deal with that. And there is no public company in Canada that does what's called dirt to doorknobs, meaning everything from the ground floor of acquisition all the way to entitlement, which is the greatest value adder, and then all the way to delivering the keys, what we call the doorknobs. So having that, to be in that fold, to be in that unique position, nobody's there to do the analysis. So if you go to the ultimate step, which is to generate a third-party gold-plated report by a reputable organization that says, look, this is what the value is, that it's 173 million US, you don't have anybody that really wants to know how to deal with it or believe it. So we had to make a decision in terms of the time that we had. Do we go ahead and continue on and build a project and have the groundbreaking as to be that moment in time that people that are, how should I say, skeptical to do the groundbreaking, or do we spend half of our time or more educating the public as to what evaluation actually means, right? What does this mean and why is everything so secure? So when you look at St. Grant, the hardest part about getting that approval to creating that $173 million was what's called entitlement. That's the political approval that allows you to build 995 homes in Southern California of what we call entry-level housing. That approval happened on August the 16th, 2021. It was incorporated in the city's chart books on September the 7th, 2021. That's almost 2 years ago. So again, if this was a mining deal or a biotech deal or something that people are more customary to understanding, then people would not have a problem having the stock somewhere between $1.50 and the valuation report, which I think is like on a per share basis, like $5.34 a share Canadian. So there might be a halfway point on that. So we kind of recited in the fact we're going to focus all of our energy into getting all the final permits, not the entitlement, that's been done already, but to get the final permits to take this into full production. So when you get 995 homes approved in California entitled, you have to do a precise development plan. And a precise development plan is the engineered details of every single home for the entire project. And I don't mean sketches from an architect. I mean the actual detailed drawings from an engineer. So we started that work in September. We delivered the package to the city in November of 2022. It's easily a year to do the engineering on 995 homes and delivering all the details. And I'm talking the roads, the sewer, the gutter, the dry electrical utilities, sidewalks, everything. We delivered that in November. Usually the responses would be 30 or 40 pages long. We had a 2-page response from the city. Some of the responses were like for the outside landscaping on these 995 homes, the city code required that the outside trees had to be between 25 to 30 feet. Our engineers made it 27 and a half, so that was a good compromise. We brought it to the city. The city said, we want you to make it 25 feet. So they have to go back, and the entire common area, every single tree now is repositioned to 25 feet from 27 and a half feet. So that took several months to do that. We refiled everything, and that was hand delivered and refiled. And there was one set that was done in February, and the final set was done in early May. The city received all that, all the changes. The city now takes that 9,000 pages of virtually finished work, meaning there can always be a little tweak, but it's not a material. It's nothing that will slow you down between the time of the submission to the actual final meeting with the city council to approve the precise development plan. The city's made it clear that they love the submission. They're extremely happy with the submission. That was emphatically stated at the meeting. The city has told the public that they're shorthanded. They've tried to hire a deputy planning director. They have problems hiring somebody. It's just the way the market is. And that the existing chief engineer and planning director is drafting, as we speak, this 150-page document, which is the project summary. It could be 140 pages. It might be 190 pages, but it's a very extensive summary of what those 9,000 pages of drawings and details say, and then present that to each council member, have a meeting with each council member, so each council member is fully apprised of what the precise development plan says, because nobody has time to read each page of every single drawing. And then once each person, each council member is given the summary and given a meeting to ask any questions, then the planning director, who's also the chief engineer, will request a council meeting specifically for the purposes of this approval. And the planning director and chief engineer made it clear that they could not make a June 12th regular meeting because there was just simply too much work to prepare the summary and prepare the documentation. So there's no questions about the project not being approved or the documents not being filed. Everything that's necessary to provide to the city council members to provide a summary is now submitted to the city. It's been submitted now for over a month, and it needs to be condensed in a summary form the way that the planning director wants to condense the information, and it needs to be socialized with each council member. So we're shooting for July. It doesn't have to be July the 12th. It can be July 20th. It can be July 8th. It's whenever they want to call a special meeting to approve this. The city wants this project built. They want it built badly. This is the last piece of land in the middle of the city that needs to be filled in. It brings a huge tax base. It brings other businesses in. It is a complete force multiplier in terms of giving the city over $20 million of building fees over the life of the project. Over 7 years, it gives over $20 million of building fees. It gives $4 million of annual taxes. It's a complete money maker for the city. The most that could ever happen in a negative way would not affect the construction or timeline of the project. The most negative thing that could happen, and nobody at this point understands of how that would happen, but the most negative thing that could happen is a judge could make the city amend the water report, add a paragraph, change a paragraph. Never will a judge stop the project. The city has emphatically stated in every newspaper in the city for the last year and said, this project is going ahead. Nothing is stopping this project. No judge in the United States is going to stop the Sage Ranch project from going ahead. We signed a deal with Voya. Voya is basically agreeing again to finance the project. And under the terms that we wanted, Voya is a $700 billion asset manager. Half of their assets are real estate investments all over the world. Voya hired water lawyers in California, the best water lawyers, and they've spoken to the city. They've spoken to our lawyers. They've talked to everybody that's involved. And Voya's water lawyers know that the project cannot be stopped. So if you have a very conservative lender who hires water lawyers to understand what's going on, they will never sign a deal with Greenbriar 2 weeks ago that finances the project. There's no way that a judge will ever stop the project. And that's what has been told by the bank's lawyers financing this project. So I think it's important that we have this video here, Sven, because this is very factual. And the Sage Ranch project is going to go in front of the city council over the very short distance here. The city council will approve this. We're going to pull the permits. Voya is going to fund it. And you have a company that does $80 million a year in revenue for the next 7 years and $24 million in profit. And I think what's most important about this is there's 34 million shares out, and 24 million a year US in profit is a lot of money, and it has a big value for the company. That is unstoppable. No one's going to stop that. We are at the final stage with the city to be able to pull the permits, and we're very excited about that. Now, regarding the Montalva project, which is our other main project, the Montalva project has received approval from the legal counsel of PREPA to sign our agreement. It's received the approval from the president of the board, who stated that the board is ready to approve the agreement. We are waiting for one signature from a person who's the vice president of operations. We found that out last week. And a meeting's being scheduled to have that meeting with the legal counsel of PREPA, who's recommended the vice president of operations to sign this deal. When she signs the deal, then the deal's approved, and they'll file that deal with the Energy Bureau, which the Energy Bureau will approve it because it's a consensual settlement. The settlement will be taken over to the oversight board for approval, and then we'll start to build the project. We've already had 2 months ago a public document that was sent out by PREPA to the Energy Bureau, which is the regulator. We're litigating in front of a regulator, and the Energy Bureau received a document from PREPA that said that we've reached settlement terms with, we're called PBGL in Puerto Rico. We go by our subsidiary name. We're not called Greenbriar in Puerto Rico. We're called PBGL Energy. The public document says that we've reached consensual agreement with PBGL Energy, and here are the 4 little things that we're doing, and we will have this done by May the 10th, and on May the 10th, they'll put a release out. Because they've done 4 of the 5 items, and they're waiting for the last signature from the vice president of operations, PREPA has not gone to the Energy Bureau asking for an extension because the PREPA lawyers are comfortable that their recommendation to sign this agreement is going to be signed by the several officials in PREPA, which is now 1 signature away. So there has been no request for an extension made by PREPA because they're comfortable, they're at the finish line, and we're going to get this thing signed. So we're very happy about it. We can't talk about it day by day. We have to wait for a public document for PREPA to go issue the news release to the Energy Bureau saying we've signed the settlement. And what the settlement is what the settlement said it is. It's the approval of our original agreement. The original agreement, the original pricing. None of the new projects on the public auction have started construction. I think out of 16 or 18 projects, only 8 have been signed, and those 8, only 1 has started construction. There is no way that any of those projects that were done in the public auction other than one or two projects are getting built. The governor of Puerto Rico himself, the governor has gone on the public record with the US Senate. The governor has sent a letter, it's a public letter to the US Senate, and said that none of the projects on tranche 1 or 2 are going to really go to production because the contracts that were issued for those projects were not economically financeable. They could not be financed. And that was more to do with the language than just the price. The agreements were set up by the person drafting those agreements to be unfinanceable agreements. So here we are 3 years later on the public auction process, and none of those projects, except for one, has started construction. So the governor is asking the federal government for $3.5 million so that the government can hire a law firm and spend $3.5 million to get a agreement that can be drafted that is financeable by the finance community, and they'll have that ready when tranche 3 or 4 begins. So nothing in the meantime is financeable. The only agreements that were financeable were the original 16 agreements that in 2020, 14 were denied. And of course, we were one of them. Those were the only financeable agreements. So PREPA has agreed to accept that old agreement, the old financeable agreement. The argument that PREPA is making to the federal government and to the state agency, is that there was a oversight where the transmission consultant did not provide the right information to make the analysis that the cost of the transmission was not an issue in coming up with a calculation, in evaluating the project. And if that information was provided, that Montalva would be the #1 project. So that's stated in the settlement agreement. That's stated in the agreement. And the legal counsel for PREPA has recommended that the PREPA management and board sign the settlement agreement, which incorporates the original PPOA. So we're extremely excited. We're at the final stages.
Thank you, Sven, on the question. Yes, regarding the Greenbriar tokens, this will be the first time in the history of the world where a public company will have either its shares or its digital tokens available to purchase. So the tokens will trade like it's trading on an alternative exchange, no different than when you have a company in Canada that trades on the United States market. So Greenbriar trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange. It will soon have its shares available as digital tokens available for purchase. Now, the advantage of that is there's a much bigger ecosystem in the world where you have over 1 billion cold wallets that investors have their digital assets contained in. If you want to buy 7 tokens of Greenbriar, that's like buying 7 shares. If you want to buy 20 tokens, it's the exact same as buying 20 shares. The difference is you can now have 1 million people owning 20 tokens, which gives far greater distribution and much more price appreciation, because people that buy 10 or 15 or 20 shares cannot do that in the current exchange system without paying incredible commissions and incredible premiums. This way you can buy your token, you can own it at a very low cost, but yet if you buy your token, let's say you pay $2.50 and the share price goes to $3.30 and you bought 20 tokens, you're less likely to sell to make a gain of $14. So what this really allows for is 1 million people to own, say, 20 or 30 tokens of Greenbriar, as opposed to right now where you have maybe 3,000 or 4,000 shareholders owning 34 million shares of Greenbriar. So it's all about the distribution. We've got all the approvals. The last thing we're waiting for is an approval from the Toronto Venture Exchange. Our lawyers are working on drafting a legal opinion. Once we get that approval, INX will commence minting the tokens and making them available for everybody in the world. Unfortunately, Canadians cannot participate in it, but Americans and many people in Europe and Asia can buy these tokens. So it's a simple way of, or a sophisticated way, let's say, of getting ownership to millions and millions of people who can buy little small pieces, who are less in looking at, okay, the stock's up $1, I should sell. These people are going to hold for a much longer period of time. And it's a great idea. So that will soon be coming down the pipeline once we get this legal opinion from our law firm approved.